Guys and girls, I had this absolute pleasure of interviewing Dr. Anthony Chaffee. For those who don't know Dr. Chaffee, he's a medical doctor based out in Western Australia and is a huge face and leader within the carnivore community. Dr. Chaffee was one of the first people I saw on YouTube that was promoting a diet that consisted mainly of just eating meat, salt, and water, i.e. the carnivore diet. He's an inspiration to many, including myself. And in this interview, he shares some of the insights of working as a doctor whilst promoting the carnivore diet, shares a lot of information about nutrition. But yeah, guys, I'll let you go ahead and watch the full interview. It's amazing. Enjoy this video. Now, Dr. Chaffee, first of all, thank you so much again for coming along and, talking to us people out here who are wanting to learn about the carnivore diet. So welcome.
Oh, you're very welcome. Thank you very much for having me.
Okay, Dr. Chaffee, I guess, for a lot of my viewers out there who are quite new to, this sort of concept of the carnivore diet, can you, I guess, give us a bit of a rundown and just tell us about yourself? You're a doctor who promotes the carnivore diet. And, if you can just tell your story a little bit as to how you decided to, pursue this path of showing people this way of eating.
Well, the main reason I decided to try to promote this way of eating for people is because I've just seen how well it works for people. I discovered it sort of by accident because I had a professor in my uh, my undergraduate degree, who told us basically that plants were toxic. They made these toxic chemicals. And that's how they defended themselves in nature, which is true. Any botanist can tell you that. And he was coming at it from a cancer biology point of view. He was my cancer biology professor at the University of Washington in Seattle. And he told us that he wouldn't eat plants, that he didn't let his kids eat vegetables or salads or anything like that, because in his words, plants are trying to kill you. And you don't want to eat these things. They're not good for you to eat. And so I just defaulted into just eating eggs, meat, and milk at the time, but rarely. And I felt absolutely amazing. I didn't think to relate the two because I'd done a lot of other things at the same time. I'd stopped drinking during the rugby season as well, and also I was in my early 20s, and I just felt great. And it was this huge improvement in my health and my performance when I stopped drinking during the season. So I chalked it up to that. But then I was still not drinking and still doing all the right things when I was 25, but I had slipped off the diet. And I remember, like, why don't I feel as amazing as I normally do? What's going on? And I couldn't figure that out. I just figured I was getting older. That was it. My body was just breaking down. And it wasn't until I was in my late 30s that I rediscovered a carnivore diet and realized that that's what I had been doing, that humans have been carnivores for millions of years. That's what our ancestors have been eating historically. I mean, I learned that when I was a child, that humans are apex predators. Apex predators are by definition carnivores. And so this is what we've been eating predominantly throughout our entire life, but that we've just been inundated with this, oh, meat's bad and cholesterol. Well, why weren't we getting sick from these foods that we've been eating forever until very recently? Then that sort of clicked into me for me, and I went back to doing that. I realized that, well, that's what I was doing for that 5 years period, that I've never felt better in my entire life, never had better athletic performance in my entire life. And so I went back to that in my late 30s and felt amazing. Went back to start, playing high level rugby at 38 when you're supposed to be well past it, and I felt fantastic. I felt like I was 22 again. I felt better at 38 than I did at 27. Playing in the Super League in San Diego, presumably the prime of my life. Now it's a decade older, and shoddier knees, and I felt way better, and I just felt amazing. And so I said, okay, well, let's look into this. And I started really digging into the research and found that there's actually absolutely a ton of supporting evidence for this, and found a lot of there are literally thousands of studies on animal-based ketogenic diets showing significant improvement for specific medical outcomes. And that's, of course, applicable to a carnivore diet, because a carnivore diet is a meat-based ketogenic diet. And
Mm.
so that was very interesting to me. But I found this whole body of medical literature that we don't get taught in medical school. We don't get taught in residency programs. We
Mm.
don't have, this CME um, uh, classes and courses and things like that. That are, because most of these things are funded by the food and drug companies. So there's a product behind it, and that's how they can justify paying millions and millions of dollars to put on
Yeah.
these programs. Makes sense, but that doesn't mean that the evidence isn't there. It's just that's the evidence that's being shown to us. So we're being spoon fed by people trying to have us help us sell their product in the
Mm.
case of their drugs in particular. But that doesn't mean that that's the only literature out there. That just means that's the literature that's easiest to come across, and that's why most people think about it. That's why most people think this way, is because we're being spoon fed this these points of data, where in fact there are far more studies showing a very different story, that don't have a multi-billion-dollar marketing budget behind
Mm.
them
Mm.
to push this out to doctors. So I just found that it was quite amazing that there was this huge body of literature that showed that these different nutritional paradigms could radically change people's health and cure diseases like diabetes and autoimmune issues that are basically thought to be incurable. They're idiopathic. We don't know what causes them. Therefore, we can't cure it if we don't know what causes it. And so, but now we're finding that we can cure this. And so
Mm.
what I think is that the diseases are being caused by eating an inappropriate diet for our species. And so once you identify the cause, then you can identify the solution. And so because I've seen that, and because I sort of had that idea and then started seeing people reverse their diseases and reverse these disease processes en masse, I've started to apply that to my patient population,
Wow.
and I've seen just absolutely dramatic results. And so dramatic results for me, dramatic results for my family, dramatic results for my patients. So I don't think it's ethical to keep this back from people. So I
Mm.
started making videos and telling people about it, because I think this is very important to reach as many people as possible. And it's also a bit of time management as well, because when I'm seeing a patient, I don't have 3 hours to go through all the different arguments and reasons why this is a really good idea. I've got a few minutes targeted
Mhm.
to what they're coming in there for, and I'm trying to like stuff in all this information, and it's really hard to do. And so as far as the time management from a time management point of view, it was a lot easier to just lay the groundwork, plant some seeds, as it were, and say,
Yeah.
watch these videos. This can help you as well. And that's been very helpful also. And it just works. And, we're getting results that no one in history has gotten. And now we're proving this
Mm.
in clinical trials and in different areas. Like Verta Health in America has published clinical trials in humans showing that you can reverse type 2 diabetes with this animal-based ketogenic diet approach. And now they've
Mhm.
reversed over 25,000 different individuals diabetes and gotten them off
Wow.
medications. And I've seen that by the dozens, if not the hundreds, in my
Mm.
practice as well. So it's the reason I push this is because, and I'm so in favor of it, is because it works, and it's the only thing that actually really works. We're not
Mm.
papering over symptoms, like which is the best we can do in modern medicine. We do great acute care, but the
Mhm.
chronic care is really bad, and unfortunately that's 90% of what we're treating these days is the non-communicable chronic diseases, the NCDs, that account for the vast majority of spending and time that we spend
Mm.
with patients. And so we're very bad at treating those. There's only papering over symptoms, and that's again because there's this product development market where the companies that
Mm.
are supposed to be looking for cures, they're not looking for cures. They're looking to sell a product, and that's fine. That's just their model. Because if they cure diabetes, then diabetes goes away, and they don't make money on diabetes anymore. Whereas
Mm.
if they're able to sell you a drug that treats the symptoms of diabetes, and allows you to live with diabetes for decades, well, then they're making money for decades and
Yeah.
decades and decades until
Mm.
you finally die. And so, is it a net benefit? Well, it's better than the alternative, certainly, but it's certainly not as good as we can do. And so we just need to understand that they're not looking for a cure. They've said this. There was a leaked slide from a talk from a meeting at Goldman Sachs that said, it asked the question: is curing disease a viable business model? I'm paraphrasing. But and answer of course is no, it's not a viable business model, because if you
Course
cure the
not.
disease, it goes away, right? And so you
Mm.
spent all this money on research and development to get a cure, and then now it's gone. Well, but it's the right thing to do. And so they're not going to do it for us. So we just need to understand that they're not looking for cures. They're looking for treatments. They're looking for ways that we can manage these diseases for the rest of
Mm.
our lives, and maybe much shorter lives as a result, most likely. And so we just don't look to them for cures. We have to look at other things for cures. And so then we have to go to the back catalog and look at different sorts of studies that don't have the marketing budget behind it to push this out to health professionals and patients to say, hey, this can actually help you. So we just need to do that ourselves. And so I've seen that that's what this is. And so I'm trying to be the marketing department
Mm.
behind these alternative forms of treating these diseases, so that this gets out to people, so that people have the skills and knowledge requisite to cure their own diseases, so that we're not beholden and yeah, we're not beholden to the drug companies to keep us in a perpetual disease state.
I love it. That's awesome. Honestly, that just you've touched on so many points there, but it just all resonated to me. Um, and it brings me so much joy just hearing it from a medical professional. Being a nurse myself, it's tough seeing the day to day effects of your chronic diseases like type 2 diabetes and
Mm.
heart disease. Um, but I like how you said you're right. You see the patients for about 3 hours of your time, and you've only got a little bit of time to really squeeze in a bit of information. How has that sort of reception been, or with the amount of people that you've sort of talked about? Do you openly talk about carnivore specifically, or is it do you have to sort of slide it in there in a way that they have to find out for themselves?
It's well, in the practice I'm in now, I'm in a private medical practice where we really focus on preventative medicine,
Mm.
and um, I guess using diet and lifestyle interventions as the main treatment focus, and then using pharmaceuticals as an adjunct to that.
Mm.
And that's what we find is that these diet and lifestyle interventions that covers about 95% of the issues. But if you
Mm.
have if you have Hashimoto's thyroiditis, and you're making all these antibodies and it's damaging your thyroid, well, changing your diet can reduce those antibodies, and we see those just go down to nothing eventually. It can take a
Mm.
while for Hashimoto's, for instance,
Yeah.
sometimes over a year, depending on how high the antibodies are, but they do go down, especially if they're very strict, just red meat and water. Those antibodies go to zero eventually, and that's the same with other autoimmune issues as well. But there could be permanent damage to that thyroid, because if they've been damaging the thyroid for years and years and years, and it's not
Mm.
able to recover fully, well, maybe they need to be on lifelong medication after that. Uh,
Mm.
Typically, they reduce their medication significantly, and many people can come off of it. But that would be an instance where the pharmaceutical side of things is very much a very important part of this,
Mm.
because if the thyroid is incapable of making a sufficient amount of thyroid hormone, well, then you need to get that from somewhere, because it's a very important molecule. So you can treat this with diet and lifestyle, and you can reverse a lot of issues. But if there's permanent damage, then okay, we'll use that to fill in the gaps. Um, I do. Yes, you do have to sort of ease into it. Not everybody's really able to
Yeah.
hear that, so you have to sort of read the room. It's sort of it's funny because it's it's the same intervention every time. I'm just going to tell you to eat meat, don't eat plants. But how
Yeah.
I get there is always interesting. So it's not like the same conversation. It's never the same conversation because
Mm.
everyone's coming from a very different place. They're going to be much more or less receptive to hearing that. And so you have to sort of
Yeah.
like ease your way into it. So you ask, okay, so what's your diet like? What are you eating? Oh, I eat really healthy. They always say that I eat very healthy. And it's like, okay, what does that mean to you? And it's like, oh, I eat a whole bunch of fruits and vegetables, a lot of healthy grains, and I don't eat a lot of
Mm.
red meat. Like, okay, so that's like the opposite of a healthy diet to me, And so,
Yeah.
um, so you just like, okay, so that's what you, and so you don't just leave that alone. You find out what's going on, what they're worried about, what their concerns are, what their health issues are. Do deep dive into their history and their exam, and looking at past medical history, and then we do a lot of blood tests and any sort of
Mm.
investigations that I think are appropriate. And you get all these blood works back, put this in the context of their individual health issues and concerns, and then go through them, and I can show them like, okay, well, look, you have severe insulin resistance, you're diabetic,
Mm.
you have this autoimmune issue, your hormones are completely out of balance, your testosterone is that of an 80-year-old and you're 35, and you're going through these things, or women going through early menopause and all these other sorts of things, and I can say, okay, so this is how your hormones work. Okay, so your insulin is up. You have your fasting insulin is elevated. You have insulin resistance. You have diabetes. Insulin is a very important hormone. It affects over 100 different processes in your body, including your hormones. It blocks the conversion of estrogen into testosterone in the ovaries for women. So they get, or of testosterone into estrogen in the ovaries for women. So they get too much testosterone, not enough estrogen, and you can go through early menopause. You can get PCOS, polycystic ovarian syndrome, which is the leading cause of infertility in women. In men, it blocks testosterone. It blocks growth hormone in both men and women, and so you can show this. Like, look, you have the growth hormone level, the IGF-1 levels of an octogenarian, and you're 40. So that's not right. That's you're aging faster than you would otherwise because your hormones are out of balance, and this
Mm.
is out of balance, and this is coming from you're eating carbohydrates that raises your insulin and all these other sorts of things, and I can point out all these different various issues. Your B12 is just bottomed out,
Yeah.
and that only comes from eating
Mm.
meat, and you point these things out, and you basically come around and say, like, look, if you change the way you're eating, you get rid of carbohydrates, you go on like what's called a
Mhm.
ketogenic diet. And I'll talk about how it's important to get away from this, and then elevated blood sugar is harmful to the body past a certain point, and we mitigate this by getting your insulin up and all these sorts of things. But then insulin damages other sorts of processes, and you just sort of walk people through the physiological processes that are going on in their body. You show them how this relates to their blood work. You show that, and you discuss how this relates to their symptoms and their issues that they've come in to see you for. You say, look, you change your diet in these ways, you will get these differences, and basically all those problems that you have will largely go away in fairly
Mm.
short order. And maybe they have Hashimoto's, and maybe their antibodies are elevated. The TPO and TG antibodies are elevated, and you say, okay, if you eliminate out these different sorts of things, your body will stop reacting to them. You'll stop making antibodies towards them. Those antibodies will come down, and you won't have these antibodies damaging your thyroid anymore. And you start eating these
Mm.
again, the antibodies will come up again. And so you tell them that, and you say, okay, you stop eating these certain things, and you'll get to the point that
Mm.
these different specific changes will happen in your blood. And if you might just go from a ketogenic point of view, especially if they're insulin resistance, diabetes,
Mm.
and so you can sort of ease in those sorts of ways, and that makes sense to them. Eating more fat, oh, look, you need more meat, you need more fat, you need these. This is where your hormones come from. This is where your B12 comes from. This is what we really have been designed to eat as a species. And then you start easing into that. So, okay, well, what is our
Mm.
species? What is food? It's a species specific diet. And autoimmunity, if they have autoimmunity, then you say, okay,
Yeah.
well, from what I can see, autoimmunity is our body attacking these plant toxins that get in the body, and they make
Mm.
antibodies towards them. You get cross reaction with your own body, or maybe these toxins are glomming on and attacking your organs, and then your body's making antibodies towards that complex on that organ. Either way, the treatment is the same. You get rid of the plants, you get rid of everything else, you eliminate down to just the basic nutrients that we need, which is just fatty meat and water, and those antibodies just come right down. And we see that. And so I tell them that. It's more or less believable for different people, but the vast majority of people are very receptive to that. And so maybe that's how I ease them into it, or maybe they're just ready to hear that. But the vast majority of people are willing and able to make those changes. And then in 2-3 months time, we check their blood work again, and they're improving, their weight's coming down, their symptoms are getting better, their blood sugar is much better under control, and has much better control over their blood sugar. Their autoimmune issues may be receding, or maybe even be eliminated. And then we check their blood work again, and all the changes I said, if you do this, these things will change in your blood, and they do. And so they say, I'm feeling better. Everything changed exactly the way you said they would for my symptoms and my blood work. Like, okay, I'm sold. It's very rare that someone say like, oh, I just really can't do it. It's too restrictive. That does happen every now and then. We have other, diet models, to help with that. I mean, I say like, listen, you are very insulin resistant. You have diabetes. You really have to, it just needs to be ketogenic, and you need meat because this is where your food's coming from. But you can have other things as well if that's really something that you want to do. And a few times people said, yeah, yes, okay, we'll do that. So we come up with a different, diet plan, generally ketogenic, because it's, especially just depending on what, we're going for there. It's sometimes very important to be on a ketogenic diet. And so, but it's funny though, because of those minority of people that say, "Ooh, I need something else besides just meat and water," and then they go to adding some other things in, I get them back in a couple of weeks or a month later, and nearly all of them have said, "Okay, I think I got to go back to carnivore. I was just feeling so much better on that. And I was getting such better results, and it's just like, yeah, all right, I get it now, because you see that contrast now. So even though they were only on carnivore for a few weeks, couple months, or something like that, and they're like, oh, I really want to do something else. I just need that variety in my life. Then they go back to eating that, and they feel like they see firsthand that they feel much worse than they did when they were just eating meat. And he's like, okay, I need to go back to this. I just felt so much better on that. And so it's, so that's quite nice to see. And then just seeing the results. I mean, we're getting objective results that no one else is getting. And I've got the blood work to prove it. And so, and then a lot of people are publishing this, a friend of mine, Dr. David Unwin, who's a GP in the UK, he was absolutely castigated, attacked, and vilified by his entire profession and the people around him for years. And he knew what he was doing was right because he could see the results. But it wasn't until he started publishing his results, it was just really to protect himself, that he got people off of his back, because he was showing the proof of his actions and his theories, that like, no, this is helping. I was like, you're killing people, you're horrible. No, actually, I'm getting them better, and I'm getting them off medication, and I'm saving the NHS tens of thousands of dollars a year just on diabetes medications for just my patients, and so it's the evidence is there, and it's more and more of it's being published now. More and more clinical trials are being done now, but the cat's out of the bag, and it's not really. I mean, people can deny anything, but it's sort of past the point of being able to just say that there's nothing there at all, that there's no there, because there are thousands of studies on ketogenic diets showing the benefits of this. And now there are large clinical trials and showing this. And now you have tens of thousands of patients at Virta Health and other healthcare institutions that are reversing diabetes and reversing these issues and documenting it and publishing it. You can't really deny this anymore. The data is out there. You just have to look for it. It's not going to be spoon-fed to you. It's not in the medical schools yet, but there are actually some residency programs that are actually designed around metabolic health. Yeah, out of University of Southern California, USC,
Mm.
Dr. Robert Lufkin.
Oh
He
yes,
wrote a
yeah,
book.
yeah.
Yeah, so
Mm.
he wrote a book called "Lies I Taught in Medical School." So he's a
Yep.
professor. He's a medical school professor at a top medical school in America at USC,
Mhm.
and he wrote this book. He's like, "These were lies. These were wrong." And so now he's starting. If I'm not mistaken, he's starting a residency program there dealing with metabolic health,
Oh,
and
awesome.
sort of the same sort of thing that I'm doing
Mm.
is just addressing diet and lifestyle to address these underlying root cause issues. And so that's good, so it's not
Yep.
the widespread, hugely available, um, part of medicine yet, but you have to
Mm.
start somewhere. And so more and more people are coming to this and figuring it out. And then thankfully, more conversations like this are happening, and more people are seeing this and saying, I'm just going to try it myself. And then
Yep.
they get the results on their own. They don't need a doctor. You don't need a doctor to tell you
Mm.
these things.
Mm.
We should just know these things. We should be able to just eat properly, be healthy, and come to doctors and nurses and hospitals when we have like an acute issue.
Exactly.
We've been in an accident, or having a baby, or there's a horrible infection, our bodies aren't clearing properly. That's real medicine. Like that's what's supposed to, or you get snake bite, something like
Yeah.
that. You get a toxic exposure to lead paint or something like that. That's real medicine that we can really help people and have for thousands of years. And now it's just been overshadowed by this wave of non-communicable chronic diseases that now
Mm.
encompass over 90% of the issues we treat. And 90% of the deaths in Australia are from non-communicable chronic diseases. 90%.
Mm.
And that's the same in the
90%.
rest of the
Really?
Western world.
Wow.
74% worldwide. So that includes all the accidents and emergencies and all these sorts of things, and infectious disease. Diarrhea and dehydration is the number one killer in infants worldwide, and yet that only encompasses, that and accidents and wars and genocides and all these sorts of things only account for 26% of the deaths worldwide.
Mm.
74% of worldwide deaths are from non-communicable chronic diseases, and 90% or more of the deaths in Western countries. So it's 89% in Australia, according to the most recent figures that I've seen, and it's around there, if not a little higher, in other Western countries as well. So this is a
Mm.
major, major, major burden of disease, and it accounts for a massive amount of our economic spending as well. It's estimated from Harvard School of Public Health that we're going to be spending over 13 trillion with a T, $1 trillion a year on the direct and indirect costs of treating of just 5 non-communicable chronic diseases: cancer, cardiovascular disease, COPD, mental health, and diabetes. Just those
Diabetes.
5, right? That will account for over $13 trillion in spending just to treat these things worldwide by 2030. That's almost double what it was in 2010. So this is getting worse. And then you
Mm.
have the indirect costs, the cost to society as opposed to
Mhm.
the cost of treating. So
Yeah.
loss out of work, disability, not being a productive member of society, not contributing to the economy. That's estimated by Harvard School of Public Health between
Mm.
2011 and 2030 to cost the planet and the economy, the global economy, $46 trillion a year, just those 5. And then the largest cost and burden to society was the cost of these excess premature deaths from non-communicable chronic diseases. So someone die of a heart
Mhm.
attack in their 30s,
Yeah.
if you're looking at this just from an economics point of view, you've just lost, 50 years of productivity potentially,
Wow.
40 years anyway, right? So it's actually a huge burden on society and the economy. And so they estimated, again, Harvard School of Public Health estimated that in 2010, we spent nearly $23 trillion, or lost 23 trillion, nearly $23 trillion from the economy from these excess premature deaths worldwide. And then that's estimated to be up around $43 trillion a year that we're losing by 2030. So this is just going up and up and up and up and up. So the people saying that no, 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 it's stabilized, everything's getting better, everything's, it's getting
Yeah.
worse. It's objectively getting worse by every metric that you can look at. The rate, the prevalence, the incidence, the amount of deaths, excess deaths, the cost of society, the cost of the economy. It's just going up and up and up and up and up. And so, people that are just denying this and say no, 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 nothing. It is actually pure denial that they are in, because this is only getting worse, and that's what all the objective measures show. And
Mm.
so, and it's so easy, because you just
Hmm.
change people's diets and these problems go away, and we get back to treating those acute causes of illness and issues that's what we've been treating as a mainstay of medicine for thousands of years, and all of a sudden it's
Mm.
just all these new diseases showed up.
Yeah.
Why
Yeah.
weren't they there before? Well, they weren't there before. Well, people were just dying too early. We only lived to be our 30 or something like that. That's just lazy thinking. People in America, since the 1700s, the rule was you had to be at least 35 to even apply to run for president of the United States. So if everyone was dying in their 30s, that wouldn't
Yeah.
work too well, right? And so, we're talking about average life expectancy from birth was 38 in 1850 in the US. But that's because infant mortality rate was so high that brings that
Mm.
average down. So average life expectancy from birth has nothing to do with how old people live when they die
Yeah.
of old age. And so if you made it to from 0, it was 38. But if you made it to 10 years old, on average, you'd make it to 58, which is more than
Wow.
enough time for diabetes and heart
Yeah.
disease to show up. I mean, we're having
Yeah.
people in their teens and 20s having heart attacks now. I have a friend of mine who's
Mm.
an emergency
Yep.
physician in India, and he had a vegetarian, traditional Indian vegetarian diet patient who was 17 years old, came in with a heart attack. 17 years old, and a 26-year-old came in with a stroke. Absolutely crazy. So definitely living long enough, and we just weren't seeing this burden of disease. The founding fathers in America, they
Mm.
were in their 80s or 90s when they
Mm.
died, unless they were killed by something, in war or a duel or something like that, or in President George Washington's case, the doctors of the day were doing bloodletting and leeching and basically
Mm.
sanguinated him, and unfortunately he died prematurely as well. But he was like in his 60s.
Mm.
Plenty of
Mm.
time to develop heart disease, plenty of time to develop diabetes, and yet these almost non-existent. And so the idea that this is just well, we're getting so much better and we're living so much longer, and that's why we're seeing this is utter nonsense.
Nah.
And especially because we're seeing these diseases happen more often in younger and younger and younger populations. So this is just flat out denial, and almost certainly being propagated by the food and drug companies that are trying to perpetuate the status quo, because they
Mm.
make tens of trillions of dollars a year off of this. And but it's off the suffering of humans and people. And that's disgusting. So whether it's
Yeah.
intentional or not, it is happening. People are suffering. That's who they're profiting off of, is suffering sick people that are looking to them in the medical establishment for help. And what they're getting is a lukewarm method of perpetuating their disease state.
Mm.
And that's honestly, I just think that's cruel and evil.
Mm.
And so if we can do better, we should do better. And that's why I'm as passionate as I am. I think that this is affecting billions of people, and billions of
Absolutely.
people have been sickened and spent decades of their life being sick and tired, and have died early and prematurely when they didn't need to. And so you're talking a massive scale. You're talking billions of people suffering and dying early, suffering for decades and then dying decades early. if you
Yeah.
can't get passionate about that, I don't really know what you can get passionate about. And so I am.
Hmm. That's awesome. That's it is bittersweet because starting off, seeing these things firsthand, you could see the improvements within the patients that you look after when they go on and make these lifestyle changes. And I've seen that as well, not in patients per se, but with people that I know that have tried a carnivore diet or even a ketogenic diet. But yeah, you're right. The burden of this, the non-communicable diseases is massive. And like, I've been a nurse for over 13 years now, and I've worked predominantly in the hospital setting. And the just the change in the demographics of younger people coming in and having strokes, like, I hate to say it, but I'm one of those people that see it
Mm,
a lot, and it sucks, it's sad. um and it's a huge burden, not just on the person themselves, but the people around them. And I think that's what, I guess, just reflecting on it, it just makes me passionate about you know um trying my best to get the word out there to people. So
yeah.
yeah. So for people that want to get started, or are intrigued at this point, or have watched the video on carnivore diet and thought, this sounds pretty amazing, and I think I'm going to give it a try. How can someone get started, or how would you recommend someone get started on this way of eating?
Well, I think I mean, there are a lot of resources out there. I have a video
Mm.
called "Getting Carnivore Diet for Beginners," things like that. I have
Mm.
a YouTube channel, or on my YouTube channel, which is just my name, Anthony Chaffee, MD.
Mm.
There's a playlist called "Getting Started on a Carnivore Diet," and there's sort of a curated list of videos I think are very important. I think it's so those videos will tell you how to do it. There's also
Mm.
videos on why to do it, why it makes a difference, why it
Yes.
matters, and what the evidence
Yeah.
for that is. And I think those are just
Mm.
as important. So you can try it out yourself. You can just see like, okay, I feel better, great, I'll do it, which is perfectly fine. A lot of people do that. But I find that most people are adherent to it and stick to it long term and don't sort
Yes.
of slip off and oh well, yeah, I was doing great, but just sort of start eating rice again and all that sort of stuff. If they know why they're doing this and why it makes a difference, and if they know the why as well as the how, then they are much more likely to be adherent to it, especially when they see those objective results. Say, okay, my life's getting better, my bloods are all improving, my diseases are gone, I'm off all my medications, and and I understand why. Like, makes sense. I'm never
Mm.
going to eat
Mm.
that crap again. I'm never going to eat that crap again unless I'm starving to death and I have no
Yeah.
alternatives. And trust me, if there's like a little, there's something crawling around me, if I'm on a desert island or something like that, there's something crawling around me, like
Yeah.
that's, better watch out, because like I'm going after
Yeah, I'm
that
going
before
for
I'm going after any
it.
plant. And
Yeah.
so, it's and because I know the why. And so I think it's really
Mm.
important to do that as well. And so going on, my channel, other people's channels, and learning about it and understanding about it, I think that's really helpful. But at the end of the day, if you want to try it, you just try it. I don't think there's anything very
Mm.
special that you have to do. You just eat fatty meat, really focus on the fat. The fat's really good for you. It's very important to get the fat. It's an essential nutrient. It's not just a calorie source.
Mm.
And so, there are essential fatty acids that you have to have, or you can get sick and die.
Yes.
And there are essential fat soluble nutrients that you have to have, or you can get sick and die. And so, fat's very important. And so, eating fatty meat and then just eliminating out all the other things, because I think it's as important what not to eat as what to eat. So for
Mhm.
myself, my own rule is um, no plants or fungus, no
Mm.
sugar or any sweeteners, nothing artificial. And for me, that goes for sauces, seasonings, and drinks as well. Some people, if they need a bit of
Mm.
seasonings, they
Mm.
just can't
Yeah.
get their head around not using anything and just eating meat with a bit of
Mm.
salt. Then fine. It's the lesser of two evils by
Yeah.
far. but if you can at a certain point, try 30 days without even spices, and most people find a significant improvement
Mm.
even then. So that's pretty much it. You just eliminate all those things. You make sure you're eating enough fatty meat, a lot of fatty meat, until it
Mm.
stops tasting good. Your hunger signals are going to be very different. You need to make sure you get enough food. It's very easy to undereat on a carnivore diet because it's so satiating. You just feel so good on it that you'd be like, oh, I don't need to eat. You do need to eat. You need to eat enough for your body, and your body will tell you.
Mm.
So you keep eating. If it tastes good, your brain is telling you eat more meat, and you get to the point where it sort of tastes like cardboard, and just go, okay, I'm not really
Yeah.
enjoying this
Yeah.
anymore. You move on with your day, and
Mm.
that's pretty much it. And you just eat that meat. That's where the nutrition is. There's nothing special about meat except for the fact that it's just exactly what our bodies require for nutrition. So you're just getting the proper nutrition. And then the trick is not eating these other things that cause direct harm.
Yeah.
And those plants, fungus, sweeteners, sugar, artificial ingredients, those can all
Mm.
potentially cause harm. And so you eliminate out all of those, just better safe than sorry, get rid of all of them, and then you feel much better. Eventually down the road, if someone wants to add something back in, ooh, can I have coffee? Try in some coffee, see how you feel. I feel worse with coffee. I get
Mm.
sore,
Mm.
I get achy. I don't get sore after I work out now. I drink 1 cup of coffee, I'm sore for 2 days. So that's not worth it. I
Mm.
have much better energy, much more consistent energy when I don't have coffee, so I don't drink coffee. Some people,
Mm.
maybe they like the effects from the coffee more than they dislike the ill effects of the coffee, and so maybe they drink coffee.
Mm.
I've seen exactly one person go back to drinking coffee when they dropped it out, and then for 30 days, and then brought it back in. They were like, yeah, I'm fine with it. That's okay. Everybody else says like, I had no idea how much better I could feel.
Mm.
I didn't realize I thought coffee was helping me. Coffee was actually hurting me.
Yeah.
So things like that. Um, I've tried reintroducing things. I've tried sampling things. Oh, what's that going to do? What's that going to do? Every single time I felt far worse. And so now I have absolutely no interest in having anything from the plant or fungus kingdoms. None. I don't want any of
Mm.
that stuff. And but everyone's individual. If you feel that some spices or seasonings or whatever or salad, I don't know why you would, but if that's something that's you feel is
Yeah.
benefiting your life, and you're okay with the effects that it has, at least the contrast now. At least you've had this stuff out of your system for at least 30 days, and then maybe
Mm.
you sample something back in and say like, oh, okay, I don't mind it too much. That's fine. I mean, everyone should be able to make their own decisions, but
Yeah.
the vast majority of people that I find that do a carnivore diet and they see that contrast, they feel so much better and they get such better results that they have no interest in eating any of this stuff. And if they do, it's very limited amounts. Um,
Mm.
and and then sometimes they slip off, but they always go like, I'm not feeling as well as I could. It's like, well, you know what to do. And they say, yeah, I
Yeah.
do. Okay. I just need to do it. So that's pretty much it, is if you want to do it, just do it. You don't have to necessarily ease into it. If
Mm.
that's easier for you, then you can ease into it. Eventually you just have to stop. So you need to make a clear plan. If you're going to ease into it, it's very important to make it very clear. It's like, okay, on this day, I'm cutting out all carbs and grains and things like
Mm.
that. And then the next Friday, I'm cutting out all beans, seeds, legumes, nuts, all that sort of stuff.
Yeah.
Next Friday, cutting out all high oxalate things, the spinach and sweet potatoes, all these sorts of, well, you're not doing that anyway because of carbs. And then next week, nightshades and all. And eventually you get down to the point where you just say, okay, and now I stop everything. Maybe
Mm.
a month or so later, you're just like, okay, now I'm done. Now it's only meat, eggs, fish, and water, right?
Mm.
And then you do that for at least 30 days, and you see how it goes. Or you just drop it if you're highly motivated. Just strike while the iron's hot and just say, get rid of this stuff,
Mm.
and just go back to eating what we're supposed to eat. It's never a bad time to stop eating
Mm.
poison, right? So it's like, just
Mm.
get rid of it, feel good, see how you feel,
Yeah.
and see how good you feel, because it's actually remarkable how much differently your body reacts to this, and then you just get onto it. So there are a lot of videos. I mean, my videos, I explain
Yeah.
all that, go into a bit more detail, and then
Mm.
understanding why you're doing it, and then just do it, see it, and try it,
Mm.
give it 30 days minimum. 3 months is better, but minimum 30 days. The first 2 weeks takes about 2 weeks to get this junk out of your system. Alcohol takes about
Mm.
3 weeks. And then after that, you start seeing, wow, this is what life can feel like. And then you'll actually feel better and better and better and better as you go. As the months go on, as the years go on, you actually continue to feel better and better because your body's optimizing. You're turning on and off different genes that optimize your health, that are getting more keto adapted, fat adapted. You're turning on stem cells, you're regrowing tissue, you're turning over your mitochondria, you're getting more cellular energy production, and your body's just improving as you go. And
Mm-hmm.
so a good 30 days at least gets this garbage out of your system and lets you see what life is like without so much poison in your body. And then after that, you just keep getting better. So, giving it a decent amount of time, at least 30 days, if not 90 days, and then just see and make the decision for yourself. It's a dramatic difference. And I really have not seen too many people willingly go like, yeah, I feel better than I've ever felt my entire life, but you know what? It's just not worth it because pizza just is just so nummy. Like
Yeah,
I've really
yeah,
not seen people do that.
no.
But to each their own. But at least and just like people who smoke or drink or do whatever, as long as you understand what you're doing to your body,
Mm,
by all means, you're an adult. If you're an
mm,
adult, and you want to,
mm,
drink and smoke and do drugs and things like that, and you understand that this is killing you slowly from the inside and making you sick,
mm,
I don't think it's a good idea, and I wish that you wouldn't, but it's your choice. I don't,
mm,
you know, I don't I don't like that people smoke. I don't think it's good for them to do that.
mm,
But if they want to smoke, that's their choice. I just don't want doctors
mm,
telling them they should smoke because it's good for them, which
mm.
is actually something that people used to say. People
Yeah,
that used to do the Tour de France, they used to smoke like chimneys. They used to smoke a bunch of cigarettes before they'd start on the day to open up their lungs and get their cardiovascular health going. Like, yeah, this gets my heart going.
yeah.
It's just like that's what people thought for a while, and that's because that's what tobacco companies were pushing out there. That was the
Mm,
propaganda.
mm,
Now we have propaganda about food, and that's another aside is that the Philip
mm.
Morris and the other tobacco companies bought out the processed food companies back in the 80s, and they transferred all their tobacco scientists into the food sciences to make them addictive, and got their marketing department pushing this stuff in the same way. So now they're pushing out this toxic, highly addictive garbage that makes people sick, and they're you're telling us that it's good for us. They're just blowing smoke up our ass, telling us that it's good for us, and that's what they did with tobacco. That's what they are doing with food now. It's the same people. It's the same.
Yeah.
It's the same drug dealers pushing a different drug. And so, as
Mm,
long as people understand that and they understand that this stuff is not good for them and it is garbage,
mm,
if they want to eat it, that's their business. I really don't care. I'm very libertarian in this. I want people to be able to make
mm.
their own decisions, but the vast majority of people would not eat this stuff if they
No.
knew that it was bad for them. The
Mm,
vast majority of people would not eat this stuff if they weren't being told perpetually that this was good for them and they should eat it and they should avoid meat, which is actually the only healthy thing for us to eat. Um,
mm.
so people are unfortunately following the recommendations to a greater or lesser extent, and that's what's harming them. I've spoken to doctors who said, "Oh, well, the
Mm.
reason people are just so fat and sick is because they don't listen to doctors about what to eat." And I know, actually,
No.
no. If you look at the consumption data and the
Mm,
consumer report data, people are doing exactly what they say. They're eating less meat, less red meat in particular, less fat, less cholesterol, and they're eating more fruits and vegetables, more grains, more seed oils, and
mm.
um, and what's happening? We're fatter and sicker than we've ever been in human history, and so we are listening. People are listening.
Mm. Yeah.
Well, only 9% of people follow the guidelines. Good, thank God.
Yeah,
It's like you imagine the disaster that it would be if more people were strictly adherent to this terrible
exactly.
advice. But people going in
Yeah.
the direction of those guidelines has destroyed our health. And
Mm,
so, yeah, I'm glad people aren't fully adherent to that, and people are eating more meat than they're supposed to eat. Good. That's the only thing
mm.
keeping them alive. And so, but just going in the direction of this bad advice has destroyed people's health. And so, no, it's not that people
Yeah.
don't listen to doctors and that's why they're sick. It's the people that are listening to doctors, that's why they're getting sick, because the advice is bad.
Sucks that there's so much of it too. Does.
Yeah.
I'll go with the question that a lot of people ask me. A few people that have come and approached me have told me that the doctors have said they've got high iron levels, and that they can't do a carnivore diet because eating red meat will increase my iron. Is there any truth to that, or are there any nuances that people need to understand when it comes to how they measure and how they look at blood results when it comes to your iron levels?
Well, there's definitely a lot of nuance when it comes to iron studies, because there's a number of different iron studies that you look at to see, okay, well, do they actually have too much iron, or maybe it's just out in their system, but are their stores high or low, or are they being sequestered? Maybe they'll have iron deficiency anemia, but actually have a ton of iron. It's just being sequestered because of high grade inflammation and things like that. So there's a lot of nuance when it comes to interpreting iron studies. But at the end of the day, this doesn't come from having toxic exposure to iron. Most people are iron deficient. Most people are eating a bunch of vegetables, and spinach has a whole bunch of iron in it. Well, it's not bioavailable, and you're bringing it in with things like oxalates will actually strip out and remove different minerals and even iron from your blood and stop you from absorbing other iron. Make other forms of iron less bioavailable. So most people are actually deficient in iron, eating the same thing. So why are some people high in iron and low in iron eating the same thing or similar things? It's how your body processes iron. It's not just too much iron that's going into your face, or taking way too much supplements or something like that, that you could potentially get an actual you could actually absorb too much iron that wouldn't be good for you. It's to do with how your body metabolizes these things. It's not, the body is so much more complex than we give it credit for. These people give it credit for, because you may be getting a similar amount of iron in, but some people are going to be able to metabolize that properly and appropriately, and other people it's going to get overloaded. And so people with hemochromatosis, a genetic issue that lets their iron levels build up. Why does that build up? It's a genetic issue. It's not because, you're eating too much iron. Oh my goodness. No, your body's not processing iron properly. And so it builds up, and so that can cause a problem. But if you address the underlying root cause of the biomechanics of how your body processes iron, well, then it may be perfectly reasonable to have more bioavailable iron. And we're talking about eating less nutritious food because we don't want these nutrients. Oh, those nutrients are so bad. And no, no, the nutrients are good. It's just how your body's using those nutrients. And so I've actually, I've seen so many patients say, "Oh, I know I have iron. I can't do that." And when in actual practice, when they actually get rid of all these other sorts of things out of their diet and they only eat, meat, which is what we're designed for, their body processes iron in a very different way. So I actually have a patient who had very high iron, extremely high, to the point that he had to get blood draws every 2 months to keep his iron levels down. And so people with hemochromatosis typically have to do this. This gentleman didn't have the genetics for hemochromatosis, but phenotypically he had hemochromatosis, same sort of treatment necessary. He had to keep doing bloodletting. And so we discussed that, and he decided to give it a go. And he's like, okay, great. And I wanted to check his blood. And obviously, if you still need to give blood, just give blood. It helps society anyway. It's nice to give blood because we need blood. It's a very scarce resource in hospitals. And so he just decided to not get tested. And it was like 5 months later, he got tested. Where normally he gives blood every 2 months. After 5 months on a carnivore diet, eating a lot of very bioavailable iron, heme iron is 3 times more bioavailable than even the more bioavailable forms of plant iron. And he found that his iron levels were perfectly normal, and they were actually lower than they were post bloodletting
Wow. Yeah.
traditionally. So it was just like, yep, okay, that's great. Proof of, and again, that's proof of concept. We're just saying that your body just works normally, and your body, and without having to intervene on its behalf. It's just almost as if that's what it was designed to do. I mean, what about all these people that had iron overload and hemochromatosis and
Yeah.
all this sort of stuff genetically, historically? I mean, how did they live? How did they survive?
Mm.
They they it's very unlikely that they were actually having the problems that we see today. And then of course we know that we're having many more problems today than we've ever had in history, like we talked about with the non-communicable chronic diseases. So yeah, no, if you have high iron, it's why do you have high iron? It's typically because your body's not processing iron properly. And so by going on a natural diet, your body's more likely to be able to process iron properly. And maybe it still can't, and maybe you still need to do a blood draw every now and then. Either way, you're going to improve your body and your health in 1,000 other ways that's going to make it well worth it. And either way, you're not losing anything, because if you still have to give blood, well, you had to give blood before, and this is exactly the same, but you have all these other improvements as well. And in fact, I've actually seen a lot of people not have to give blood draws as a result of that, because their bodies are just working normally again.
Look, we could go on all day. Honestly, I could have this conversation for hours and hours, but I don't want to take up all of your time. Dr. Anthony Chaffee, if you don't mind just telling people where people can find you on social media, or do you have a website as well that people can book in consultations? Or
yeah, so I have a YouTube channel and a podcast. A YouTube channel and my Instagram are just the same thing. It's just Anthony Chaffee MD, and that's where I have all my videos available, and I try to publicize them on Instagram and say when new things are coming out. I publish pretty consistently and regularly, and so there's a lot of content material there. But because there's a lot of content material, it can get a bit overwhelming, which is why I have the playlists, and there's a podcast section there on my YouTube where it's just the podcast episodes. I have some because podcasts could go on for a while, so maybe I'll take out a 10-15 minute chunk where I'm just talking about this one subject, and so put those things out as well. So those are available for people, but if you just want to go through the podcast, they can do that. Or my actual podcast on podcast platforms is just called the Plant Free MD. And so people can even just start at one and go from there. And, the visuals are sometimes nice too, because sometimes I have like presentations, I'll have slide presentations as well. And so that can be helpful on the video side of things, but most of them are very, are more than adequate with just the audio. And that's pretty much it. So yeah. And, so those are my main sources. And, I'm building a website at the moment. That's not my thing. And so I have other people helping me, and it sort of just takes a while to get that done. But I do consultations. I try to direct people just to my online content that's available for free, because I don't, this is all this stuff is available. And so if you just watch a video on it, you don't need me to tell you, that's much better, because it saves you money, it saves me time. And I'm very time poor at the moment anyway. So, it's better to just, get that information for free. And then if you really have an issue that's very specific to your case that you want to talk to me about, then that's something that I can, hopefully help with. But that's available. Like if you go on my YouTube channel or my Instagram, you can find links and things like that to booking a consultation. But it's I encourage people to try to find everything that they can on the available for, because this shouldn't be behind a paywall. People shouldn't have to have money to be able to be healthy. Like this is our birthright. We are supposed to be healthy. The nature of all life on Earth is that of health. And so we're the only species that are typically unhealthy, and that's wrong. That means something's poisoning us. that's affecting us negatively. So I think this is just our birthright, and so I don't think that people should be charged for this stuff. But if you need specific help that my videos can't help with, then I make myself available, for consultations sometimes as well outside of work hours. And yeah, and we do a challenge sort of group if people want like a little more help and support. It's like a monthly 30-day challenge thing. That's at howtocarnivore.com. And then my website is going to be thecarnivorelife.com. It's not up yet, but we'll see. We'll get there eventually. And so maybe by the time it comes out, it'll be up. So we'll see. But yeah, those are some places people can find me, and there's other social media, but those are the main ones.
Perfect. Well, again, Dr. Anthony Chaffee, thank you so much for your time. Really do appreciate you having a chat with me and other people who are watching right now. So, guys who are watching and girls, if you like the video, give it a big thumbs up, subscribe on the YouTube channel, and also to follow Dr. Anthony Chaffee on his social media platforms if you aren't already. So yeah, I'll see you guys in the next video.